Okay, so welcome everyone to Lessons in Sustainable Leadership with Eve Ellis and Maria Maisuradze. I would like to thank you all for joining us. We have two wonderful speakers. Eve and Maria, thank you for joining us and offering us your time. So I'm just going to start by introducing Eve. Eve is the Vice President and Wealth Advisor of the Matterhorn Group at William Blair. William Blair specializes in investment banking, investment management, and private wealth management. The Matterhorn Group at William Blair is a wealth advisory group executing financial and philanthropic plans for individuals, businesses, and nonprofit institutions. Eve's education includes a BA from Yale, Columbia Business School in the Heilbrunn Center for Graham and Dodd Investing, Value Investing with Bruce Greenwald, and Harvard Business School in Sustainable Business Strategy. Our other speaker is Maria Maisuradze. She's the founder and CEO of Education for Sustainability Academy. Maria has worked in investments and corporate finance industry for over a decade prior to launching her career in sustainable finance. In 2018, she co-founded a green fintech startup focusing on portfolio carbon footprint measurement, and later transitioned into sustainable finance education by creating Education for Sustainability in 2020. Maria holds a Bachelor of Commerce with a major in finance from the John Molson School of Business, Concordia University. She is a CFA charter holder and SASB FSA credential holder. Maria is also a co-creator of Sustainability Ecosystem housed at Concordia University and is a member of CFA Montreal's ESG Committee and SASB Quebec Working Group. So I'd like to start if both of you can just tell me a little bit about your career path and what led you into the role that you're currently in today.
Maria, you want to go first?
Sure, I can kick it off. So first of all, real pleasure to be here. I highly admire all the hard work the students are doing today you're really educating yourself, which is absolutely great. And I'm happy to be of support to this initiatives. So a little bit about my background. I graduated in finance in the middle of financial crisis in 2008. So that was a great time to start. I chose finance because I just kind of excluded everything else that didn't make sense, and that kind of, parents always pressure you to get a job that, there's always going to be safety, which is not the case. And so I tried marketing. I felt that was a little bit more closer to my personality, and I thought that I'm not learning anything concrete. What a misconception. So I graduated finance. I got my first job in banking, worked at TD Bank. I tried different roles in finance. I never really found myself the passion for the work itself. I was a good employee. I was great collaborating. I worked with amazing teams in great organizations. I tried private equity, investment administration. Last 5 years I spent at the Caisse de dépôt placement Québec, which is one of the biggest pension funds here in Quebec, in the corporate treasury role. And so I never really found it. I thought there's something bigger for me. And at the same time, I always had the passion for entrepreneurship. I always had launched some projects on the side. And I think where I am today is in a big part a result of this self-reflection, but also finding a personal purpose. And that really came to me after having my first daughter in 2016. I kind of really recentered and said, okay, well, I have already 10 years of professional experience in finance. Doesn't seem to be my thing. So what can I do to leverage on my skills? And I have a creative side, a social side, and a finance expertise to actually, move to something that actually has some difference in society. And I did care about environment. So like everybody else, being very new in the space, things that we see, which is like waste, pollution, it bothers us, but that's just like a very high tip of the iceberg. There's so much to uncover. And so as I decided to launch myself in entrepreneurship, I left my corporate job. I started learning about this thing. So I discovered the carbon footprint, the climate change, and everything that's coming towards ourselves. And this was a big discovery for me, not only on a personal passion and interest level, but also discovering the finance community that's completely different from what I've known so far. The sustainable finance community is absolutely different type of species in finance. There's a lot of collaboration happening, a lot of empathy, a lot of peer-to-peer support. And I fell in love with this type of finance, which I thought is not for me at that point, but I finally found my role of, having a purposeful career and leveraging on my expertise in finance. And so as I ventured in this new space, I realized that it's great to have carbon calculators and clean technology solutions, but at the very base, we don't have a buy-in through a bigger society in terms of adoption of those. So I kind of positioned myself in a lower levels of the iceberg where, trying to shift the perception, ideologies, and also creating this awareness that sustainable finance or integrating ESG is not what usually is kind of preconcepted with a lot of people saying, it's foregoing financial returns or it's lower returns, etc. So this is really what I decided to target because it was pissing me off. I went to a bank, I just to open my business account and I asked, do you have any green investments? And they said, and the advisor, and this is a big bank, which is signatory of a PRI, by the way. And the advisor tells me, oh, it's not a good choice. The returns are not great. And I was so boiling inside of myself. I said, well, they need education. And this was the beginning of my venture with Education for Sustainability, which basically has as a purpose to deliver the awareness about sustainable finance at scale. So really leverage on one side, an entertainment-driven, fun content, and on the other side, the technology to offer it across organizations. So teach those financial advisors that there's no one way of ESG investing, and there's no, sacrificing returns anymore. And this has been backed by so much research. So this is where I am today, and I'm, very lucky to be working with pretty big financial institutions, training their employees on what is ESG and what are different strategies and why is it important to be aware and do it. That's about it.
Wonderful, thank you. Eve, would you like to share with us?
Sure. So Emma, thanks for having me. Everybody, thanks for having me. And a special thank you to Naeem Temwak for making the connection and inviting me. He's been a star intern at William Blair. So I, unlike Maria, started not from the finance side at all. My background is, I played competitive tennis. And in college, I majored in American Studies and with an area of concentration in what was then called Women's Studies. So it was not a finance background at all. And I coached and I played competitively on the Satellite Pro Tour and including in Montreal at one point. And then I was coaching and teaching tennis and then later had a web consulting business, which I thought after 9/11, I realized was not a passion of mine. And I saw an ad that said, educators, attorneys, and accountants come learn about being a financial advisor. And I knew actually right away that that's what I wanted to do as soon as I saw that ad, because I thought that it was really about coaching people in a different area of their lives than obviously their tennis. But I really saw it as coaching people in a more important area of their lives and thought that's what I want to do. So as a wealth advisor at William Blair in New York City, there really, I see three parts to what I do. One is you have to attract clients in the first place in order to get to do the comprehensive wealth planning. And so for me, I needed to get accredited in this area to become, a certified financial planner and know what investments were all about, and philanthropic planning and filling in the whole picture for clients. So it's really about, saying that there are three areas, but the first area is really attracting the clients, because you need clients in order to do the comprehensive wealth planning. But the second was, how do you maintain clients? And that's actually doing the work and figuring out what are clients' individual objectives and goals and driving them towards success in those goals. And the third piece is really to stay on top of things and stay knowledgeable about the field. And then as time was going on, clients were asking to invest more in alignment with their values. And we were already providing outside managers who were looking at ESG issues. But at that same time, which was in about 2012, I started to read the research that showed that companies with more women on their boards and more women in senior leadership, and since then it's been more about all kinds of diversity, lead to better performance and better results. And so we started, my partner Nikolai and I started 2 specific strategies that are focused on gender and diversity lens investing. So I feel really fortunate because I get to marry my interest, my passion towards how do we make this a more just world and fair world with what I do professionally. So here I am. Wait, Emma, you're on mute.
Sorry. Is there any sort of like previous professional experience that has helped you like most get into the role? I know Eve, you sort of like spoke about sort of the tennis that got you into it, but is there anything else that you'd say that got you into this role like professionally?
Well, I see it as a helping profession. And I mean, I don't think all of the roles in finance are helping professions, but I don't know. I think that it's an extension of that. I mean, this is really about helping people for really major parts of their lives.
Yeah.
And I thank Maria because yes, the education needs to be there so that there are more advisors who are focused on sustainability.
Yeah, of course. Both of you, what is something that you enjoy most about the work that you do? If you'd like to start, Eve or Maria.
I guess I can go. So it's the people, 100%. And I'm absolutely in love because I feel we're like almost a family. Montreal is very unique at the same time because we're a relatively small community. Everybody knows each other in sustainable finance. And there's some kind of a vibe that just makes it so much fun. And at the same time, we're almost like a team of warriors working for different companies, yet kind of almost working to the same goal. So that's one of the biggest parts. But the other fun part that I kind of realized later on, and it was not intentional, is that as a kid, I always dreamt about being a choreographer. So I was like teenager and I would imagine like a big dance show where I would choreograph in my head, like, 50 people doing some kind of a show. And so our courses are very much choreographed because we use a lot of animation, videography, etc. So I'm almost like a movie producer today, but we're using it for teaching techniques. And so one day I was doing it and I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally choreographing the learning experience. And I guess that kind of really connected a lot of things from my childhood passions and what I do today. So that's another thing that I find really, really fun in my current position.
That's wonderful.
For me, I just find it really gratifying and yes, fun to help people. I mean, a few weeks ago, clients were buying their first house. To make that happen, to be a part of making that happen was fun and gratifying. I think it's also really gratifying. I'm goal oriented. And so it's really gratifying to, let's say, have serious wins in the social impact area because investors are pressuring companies to do the right thing and are changing corporate behavior. So any of those wins are huge. If there are more women on boards or more people of color on boards, it's not just us, we're part of a larger movement, but to see those numbers go up, that's really gratifying and fun to see. There was an issue here in the States about corporations making employees sign non-disclosure agreements for sexual harassment situations. And that is now a thing of the past, as President Biden just signed recently to end that for sexual harassment. In the future, it'll be about, the next focus will be about racial discrimination. But those are huge wins. So that, yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's fun, but it's also fun to have the clients and the investors feel that they have a say, because it's really the pressure from them. If they didn't put their money behind their values, then everything would just stay as a status quo. And that is not good. That's not good.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I would love to open it up for the viewers to ask some questions. Do we have any questions from the people that are attending? Yes. Leela?
Can you hear me? Sorry, I wasn't sure if I was muted or not. Yeah, okay. Hi. Yeah, so I think this is really fascinating. I think the interesting thing about the ESG space in general is that it's kind of oversaturated in jargon, however. And I also think that, yes, like people want to put their money where their values are, but there's sort of like a contradiction, because I think people perceive this space as not as, I guess, financially profitable for them, and also to achieve their goals. I think these are sort of these ideas around the space, but I wonder about how you communicate this to clients if they have any questions or if there are any gaps in their understanding of the space.
So I assume that's for me. Yeah. Okay. So Leila, I think that's a really good question. And it used to be, as Maria was saying, that people thought you had to sacrifice financial returns for social returns, and you don't have to. And that's what happened for me when I first entered the profession in about 2002, when I had a college student who I had taught tennis to, coached tennis to, and he had inherited money. And he said to me, Eve, I want to invest in socially responsible way. And I said, okay, Glenn, that's fine, but know that you will sacrifice financial returns. And he said, that's okay. And then we started to have our portfolio reviews, and I realized that his portfolios were outperforming the traditionally invested portfolios. So for me now, I think, do people want to be invested in fossil fuels? Is that really an industry for the future? Is that forward thinking? Or do they want to invest in new forms of energy? And, and to me also, having a diverse workforce and a diverse group of leadership, that's forward thinking. That's where you're going to get better ideas. And actually that does lead to better performance. Now, if we talk about, let's say one of our portfolios is the gender parity strategy, where we invest in companies that meet our financial criteria, and each company has to have a minimum of 3 women on its board and or 3 women key executives. And initially, I was only telling certain clients about it. And then the returns were strong that I thought, if somebody hasn't shown an interest in sustainable investing, should I mention it? Well, actually, I'm hurting that person by not mentioning it. So there's so many funds out now in ESG. I think there's a dearth in certain areas, maybe some fixed income areas, but there's so many that people can choose from. And I'm not supposed to talk about performance publicly, but I feel like you're all a small informal group, and this is not out in public. But let's say gender parity last year, the benchmark for it was up 25%. Gender parity was up 23%. So you might say, oh, that's terrible, we lagged the benchmark. Well, actually, everybody was very pleased to be up 23%. To us, we did it while building a defensive portfolio, meaning we had a good portion, over 8% in cash the whole time, which would make you think that we would perform much lower than the 23% because so much was in cash for reasons that we wanted to be in cash. So I think, the ones who get it, and the ones who don't, they'll come to it later on. But I think eventually, everything will be ESG. I mean, it makes sense. if you're looking for performance, it makes sense. But I had to see that the business case was there before I could come out. And the research was showing that the business case was there. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
Not at all. Thank you.
I could jump into Leela. It's a great question. And this is something I always ask myself. And I guess there's no kind of one way that fits all. And I do take different approach depending on who am I talking to. Generally, younger individuals have already understanding of this is their future, right? If we don't change how we operate and we don't kind of change this economic system that's growth focused, they probably won't have a future, or their kids are going to have a very, very hard time. And so I have two really ways of approaching it. And individuals who are a little bit more advanced in the topic, they understand there's different strategies. There's impact investing, which is really, value driven, of generating positive impact. ESG integration, which is, even CFA Institute said, this is just fundamental analysis. If you're ignoring when you're analyzing a company and you're ignoring the impact of the climate transition risk or physical risk, you're ignoring financially material factors. And so you're not doing your job as a financial analyst properly, because you're not analyzing everything that could hit the bottom line. So I think ESG integration, which is basically looking at environmental, social, and governance factors, how they affect the company, is a given. And I think that's it. We need to kind of get up to speed with education. But once there's this awareness, and I think with CFA Institute also doing a lot of work on creating this understanding, then we need to move to impact. And when I talk to people who are already kind of a certain halfway through, I stole an image from a colleague of mine that I admire very much in the space, and she talks about a 3-layer wedding cake. So imagine a 3-layer wedding cake, and the bottom layer is our planet, right? We need a stable environmental conditions to have the second level, which is a stable society. And then on top of that, this is the way we can have a 3rd layer, which is our economic system. So we cannot have the top layer of the cake if the bottom one is destroyed. And so this is how the system thinking works. And once you understand that, focusing on your own portfolio is very limited in the sense that, well, in 5, 10, 15 years, there's going to be such a disastrous impact on all of the portfolios because, the climate risk is undiversified. We're standing on this planet that, yes, in a short term, you could make a little bit of alpha, but in the long term, it's inevitable. So the only way to address it is to really join the forces and start working towards the progress to solidify the bottom layer. And then the second layer, you see a lot of instability in the social side now. And then the economy will be healthy and stable. So those are my 2 ways of going about it.
Sorry, may I ask a follow-up question? I don't know if there are other hands.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, just on that point about sort of impact investing versus ESG, I feel, like between sort of social responsible investing, talking about like corruption within the government structure of the organization, just in general resilience as well. I think the COVID pandemic and now some political instability in the world has shown that there is a lot of resilience that needs to be integrated into organizations in general. But I feel that impact investing, it's sort of that 3rd piece, like risk, return, impact. And I think that it's still kind of lagging personally, but I was wondering about what you think. Like, is it still at its nascency, or is it really going to take off pretty soon?
Well, Maria, you want to answer that? Because
Yeah, I could take it. So there's definitely a lot of interest and appetite. So it's growing fast, the impact investing space, but there are definitely a lot of challenges. So impact investing is like, take their, regular investing where you do the normal financial analysis, add to that analysis of environmental, social risks and opportunities. So, that's the next level. Like, technically all the good financial analysts should be at that level because this is just fundamental analysis. And then when we're talking about impact, now we're talking about a theory of change, and we're talking about this, very specific impact that needs to be quantified. So there has to be intention behind it. So it's not like I'm investing in solar panels because that's where the trend is, and I'm planning to do it's. I'm trying to create some kind of additionality to what already exists with my capital. And so there's definitely a way to go, but I could tell you that by the amount of impact funds that I see being created, not only in Canada, but around the world, the amount of capital that's flowing into it, I think, it's starting to accelerate. And from what I see in terms of conversations, research, and, publications out there, I could see that we're moving strongly now from kind of risk and opportunity perspective for the company towards the impact metrics. And one of the really interesting work that is done at Harvard Business School by Professor George Serafim is actually targeting that. It's called the impact weighted accounts. So they're trying to price in everything that's currently unpriced. So if you're depleting the land or polluting the water, you're currently not paying for it. But if you had to pay for it, how much would you be actually worth, right? And so their studies show that if we account all those currently external factors that we kind of incorporate it, internalize it, most of the companies are operating at a loss. So that's extremely interesting. To answer your questions of those kind of like a long-winded way, there's a way to go, and there's a long way to go, not only in terms of mobilizing capital, getting consensus around, terminology, but also in terms of more startups in the impact space. So I do know impact funds, they're trying to find investing solutions, but it's not easy, especially in developed countries. Like there's the regional consideration, et cetera. So there's still a lot of work, but I could see definitely a positive outlook for impact.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up Serafim's study. I forgot about that. And I loved hearing about it. And I think also, Leila, that, for families, I mean, when I think about the client, the individual family client, I think what I'm seeing more is that they are allocating X number of dollars to invest in the public markets. And yes, they want to see corporate change in public companies. And then they are figuring out philanthropically what they want to be doing, where they're not going to get any financial return. And then, yes, they're creating certain impact investment products for others to invest in, where they're looking for some return, but not the same return as investing in the public markets. So I think the clearer the investor can be, the better they'll be, and the more successful they'll be at reaching the goals. But they have to be really clear what their objectives are from the outset.
I think we have a question, Jaichi.
Thank you, Emma, and also thank you to the amazing two speakers. I actually have a question. Just when Maria brought up the idea of assessing the impact with the responsible investment, and also Eve also talked about this of how we can make investors be more clear about what they're actually being involved in. So my question is, in your opinion, how urgent is the issue of the inconsistency that's occurring right now in terms of ESG framework? I'm asking from a point of view where I feel like, does the improvement in consistency and uniformity in ESG framework reporting, would that increase clarity and information disclosure for companies to better disclose their ESG performance, hence giving investors a better idea in investing? And does it also just help sustainable finance to be mobilized and better mobilized in general?
Well, I think we need that uniformity, but we can't wait. We have urgent issues here, and we can't wait for that to come about. So I think we need to work on all forces at once. I don't know, Maria, do you think that as well?
Everything's urgent, right? And everything's taking way too much time because there's so many things involved, right? Here we're talking about politicians, the policies, the regulators, the associations, and there's so much things happening. There is a lot of convergence happening right now. The news that was announced at the end of the last year that International Sustainability Standards Board is taking on the sustainability accounting standards and the CDSB, et cetera. So those are, and today I seen the news that GRI is also
IFRS and GRI,
yeah, we'll be
today.
collaborating. So there's definitely movement. This is great, but with the way I see it, we're still in a space of kind of like maybe doing less harm, where we need to be, you know, like there's in impact investing, there's this concept of A, B, and C: avoid harm, benefit the stakeholders, and C is contribute to the solutions, which is like a stepping stones. And to be an impact investor, you need to have all those three. And so those frameworks currently are very much gravitating around financial risk. It's a great, you know, step forward, but it's definitely not long enough, because by the time they agree on all these things that are financially material for the companies, we need to be like on the impact level. So I agree with you. We definitely need to run faster than that.
Okay. Can I ask a follow-up question? Just a really quick one. Okay. And to follow up on that, I'm really curious on both of your opinion on. I personally, I also agree the fact that right now we don't have a perfect solution, but doing something is better than doing nothing. But is there any concern, especially from a financial performance point of view, that there's definitely a big element of hype and a high demand in ESG investing, and we can see that from green bonds, where the greenium it's actually quite significant. And is there any concern on this high expectation and return is due to there's a bit of ambiguity in terms of what investors understand?
I don't know. I know there's all that greenwashing talked about and written about. I haven't paid so much attention to it. I think you have to choose good managers for a variety of reasons, and that would be one of the reasons not to choose a certain manager. So I think the press makes it more of an issue than it is. Maybe somebody else would say I'm being naive, but I just think you still have to pick good managers and use many reasons, back it up with many reasons.
Yeah, I agree, because like we see that in the press a lot, and I'm just personally, I'm really interested in seeing how, you know, practitioners actually gauge that kind of issues.
But that's where I think you also have, everyone has their own objectives, and the press's objective is not necessarily to get more impact into certain funds and to change corporate behavior necessarily. It's to have, sometimes it's to have a story, and they need to have that story to have whatever, you know, I mean, they have a very different objective from what my objective is. So they need to fulfill theirs. And that's why I think I don't pay attention to it, I guess. I don't know, Maria, you think I'm making a mistake?
I agree with you in the sense that, you know, because there's no universal definition of what is ESG or what is sustainable. There's no such thing as a sustainable company. Okay, you could be self-sufficient as an individual, but there's no such thing as a company that has like zero impact on its environment, for example. So I think, you know, what you're talking about is a little bit of like an ESG bubble. Do I agree with this or not? I think it really depends. I think what we're seeing right now, the valuation going up, is because we're now pricing properly the companies that are well positioned in the long term. Right, so I don't see it as a bubble, but the overpricing may occur in the companies that greenwash, right? So this is where the due diligence comes in. So you always, the company, corporate social responsibility reports is just a marketing tool, right? You need to understand what's behind it, and this is where the shareholder engagement comes into play. You actually get involved to understand what are the mechanics behind, who's accountable for what they're actually doing on the ground. If they're saying they're planting millions of trees, but their business model is literally cutting trees to produce paper, that's clearly greenwashing, right? So it depends. The answer is it depends, and the due diligence, and I guess also the increased transparency and regulation around this will definitely address it.
So the meeting's going to end very shortly. If anyone has a quick question, maybe we can get that in, but it ends in 2 minutes, unfortunately. It's going to get cut off. I hope no one gets cut off if they're talking.
Yeah, can I ask a quick question here?
Yeah, for sure.
So I was doing some research on this company, financial company called SEB, and like they kind of like change. They have like a bunch of couple of ESG funds, and they kind of changed the rules like with the conflict in Ukraine, and started reinvesting in defense companies after they promised they wouldn't do that. And I was wondering, like, I don't know what a good solution is, but do you think there should be like some sort of like regulatory framework, like for like something to be labeled ESG, like sort of like a stamp of approval to make it like a certified ESG firm, and like to just to make the rules a bit more legitimate, instead of like having some sort of like ambiguity and obscurity and like how it's determined to be like quote unquote ESG?
Well, Morningstar does do ratings on ESG ratings. So digging into their ratings of a company, I think would provide what you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, I just think because like those, I guess I meant more of like maybe a government regulatory thing, because like those ratings, like you can find like literally like tobacco companies and like pretty like corrupt companies that have like Morningstar like ESG approvals. And I was just wondering, like, I don't have a solution, but I was wondering like if you
Well,
think there's like a different way of doing it.
well, the SEC and NASDAQ are starting to get to that, but it's a process. So it's not there yet. Yeah, I think it would help.
So we have less than a minute, so I'll conclude the meeting. Thank you so much, Maria and Eve, for joining us today. It was wonderful having you both here. Thank you so much.
It's been great to chat with all of you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Emma, and everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks. Good to see you again, Eve.
Great to see you, Naeem. Thanks.